Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's conversation where we will be discussing domestic violence and mental health for Mental Health Awareness Month. My name is Maddie Hahn.
And I'm Stephanie Klotz.
Thank you for being here with us today and joining us for this important conversation. While today we are discussing mental health, it is important to mention experiencing abuse does not mean someone automatically has a mental health issue, but experience of violence and trauma can sometimes cause mental health issues or exacerbate existing ones. Stephanie is going to begin our conversation today by discussing the impact of violence and trauma.
Thanks, Maddie. It is really so important to remember that for someone that's experienced abuse, that doesn't mean, oh, that's a one-way ticket to now you need mental health services. But certainly when you think about what someone is experiencing in an abusive relationship, we know that the impact of trauma is so important to recognize. One eye-opening fact for me was that when you think about post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, what's the population that comes to mind, right? I'll give everybody a second in the audience to think, who do we think has PTSD? And I'm going to bet that most of you military vets came to mind, right? That's the population we always think about. And absolutely, military vets do get PTSD. But we know that there are several populations that have a higher occurrence of PTSD, and that is child survivors of sexual and physical abuse, adult survivors of sexual abuse, and adult survivors of domestic violence. So we know that not only the traumatic incident can cause PTSD, but when you think about those three populations, the difference is that the person inflicting the violence, the person inflicting the trauma, is someone that's supposed to love and care for them. And so not only do I have the violence and trauma of perhaps strangulation or physical assault or even name calling, that when that comes from someone that I care about and that is supposed to care about me, that adds an additional layer of trauma, right? That's like really messes with your head. How could this person do this to me, right? They love and care for me. What is happening here? And so it is even more traumatic, right? And think about this, right? If you're walking down the street and someone calls you a nasty name, you're like, what's that person's problem, right? Like, get a grip. But if my friends say, Steph, you've really been being a bee lately, I'm going to pause and think about that. And it might have more impact because I care about those people. I care what they think of me, and I love them, and I want them to have a positive thought process about me. And so it has more staying power. It sticks. And so, whether it be physical trauma or verbal and emotional abuse, experiencing that at the hands of someone that really cares for you is tough to navigate. You also, can feel anxious if you're walking on eggshells all the time, trying to navigate this person's abusive minefield. That is anxiety provoking. And so you can also feel depressed, right? If you're experiencing this abuse, you're isolated from friends and family, you can start to have feelings of depression that emerge while navigating abuse. And so, certainly not everyone that experiences abuse is going to have that same experience, but it really is so common. We also see that survivors might lean on substances in order to help cope and navigate with that abuse. And we also see that if someone has an existing mental health issue, right, if I'm already anxious and on top of that, I'm experiencing this abuse and trying to navigate that, certainly it's going to escalate my experience with those issues and have a significant impact. And so, that is just kind of scratching the surface about some of the ways that navigating abuse can impact someone's mental health. But I think, Maddie, you have more info about how it might be experienced for teens as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So mental health can impact teens and relationships in many ways. Mental health can impact either partner in the relationship. So whether we're looking at the individual who is experiencing the abuse or the person who's being abusive in the relationship. One example I will start with is depression and suicidal ideation. This is often something we can see in a relationship as a partner using suicidal ideation as a threat to keep a partner in a relationship. And that is not to minimize the experience of suicidal ideation for that partner, but threatening themselves and their own safety is a way that they can exercise that power and control to try to prevent a partner from leaving a relationship. And we know that a breakup does not cause someone to hurt themselves or to take their own life, but it can be used by a partner to cause that manipulation and have another individual think that that may be happening. This can be a very big and scary burden to put on a partner, and to hear a partner use phrases like, I can't live without you. I wouldn't be able to go on without our relationship and being with you. This can make someone feel very trapped and that they don't have the option to leave this relationship. Even if this was a seemingly healthy relationship that two partners were enjoying, that could, right, that threat and that trap, that making you feel like I don't even have the option to leave if this isn't safe or healthy for me. Anxiety can also impact teens in many ways. As Stephanie was kind of talking about anxiety and that feeling of walking on eggshells within this abusive relationship. Experiencing dating abuse in a relationship can impact or escalate that anxiety, especially with teens where we're looking at this may be their first or second experience with dating. Setting the framework of what it's like to be in a relationship and what it's like to have a dating partner. This can impact how we view dating relationships moving forward. Like I said, especially if this is maybe our first relationship, setting that tone of what it's like to be in a relationship. And is this how it feels to kind of have this anxious thoughts and feelings? So anxiety could also be used by an abusive partner as a justification for abusive or unhealthy behaviors. Some examples of this is saying that they need to check your social media, or they need to read your text messages or follow your location because they have anxiety. And anxiety is absolutely real, and this impacts individuals and those thoughts and feelings. But it's important to discuss with a partner how there are other ways as a couple they can navigate and support those feelings. And it's not fair for a partner to potentially use anxious feelings as a way to gain that power and control in a relationship. So those were just a few examples of how we can see this can impact both the individual experiencing mental health issues, whether this is the abusive partner or the individual who is experiencing that abuse. They can really just, this can be used in an unhealthy and unfair way to blame problems in the relationship. So that's really the teen impact kind of summed up in some of those important and significant ways we see that impacting teens. And now, Steph, I'm going to pull up that video to get our conversation started for about our mental health coercion.
Thanks, Maddie. So while you're pulling that up, I'll just introduce everyone to the idea of mental health coercion. So this is especially prevalent for someone who's navigating a illness or a health issue going into the relationship. But really, it's about that partner using your mental health against you. So I'm going to let the video kind of introduce it a little bit further. So as you can see, the mental health quotient kind of starts with this idea of convincing your partner that they are crazy or that they're mentally unstable. And that piece is really important when we're thinking about this power and control dynamic, because if I don't consider myself a valid reporter, if I think I'm crazy, right? That one survivor said, I felt insane. Then how can I navigate out of the abuse, right? We know some of you might remember the film Gaslighting. Um, and that term really describes kind of convincing someone that they are crazy, so that that person doesn't feel valid in their own thoughts, and how off balance, how much power that gives someone when they are able to use that against you. I think it's really important to note that it also involves kind of preventing someone from the means to navigate their mental health issue, like a counselor or medication, but then holding that issue against them. And so we also see sometimes with parenting, co-parenting, the abusive partner will say, well, I'll tell them that you're crazy and that you're not capable of caring for the children. And so then that brings in threats, and the children all kind of tied into this one piece. And actually, one of my very first experiences in understanding DV was a story about mental health coercion. So I had an internship at a DV agency in really rural upstate New York. It was really cold there, close to Canada. And I was kind of questioning whether someone using abuse was kind of like they lost control, right? I was young, I was learning. We're all there sometimes. And they said, I'm going to tell you a story that shows how purposeful it often is. And they shared a story of a young woman who started to hear voices and was really concerned about her mental health. And so she went to the local hospital for an evaluation. She said, please, you've got to help me. I'm hearing voices. Something's wrong. And so they did their evaluation, and the person doing the evaluation was like, this doesn't add up, right? It doesn't meet my criteria for someone that would be having this experience of hearing voices in any way other than hearing voices. Probably poked around a little bit about her relationship, and it led to law enforcement searching her home. And I'm going to date myself here, but they found a cassette player, tape player, linked to the heating system, so that when the heat kicked on, it would play this tape. You're hearing voices. You're crazy. And wow, that's a really drastic example of someone going to these extreme lengths to convince their partner that they, aren't competent, right, to get that ultimate piece of power and control. And certainly it can look like that. It can also be much more nuanced, but using the idea of that societal stigma about mental health, right? That means something's wrong with you, instead of that we all exist on a spectrum of mental health. And sometimes we're more healthy than others, every single one of us. And so the abusive partner uses that societal stigma as another means of gaining that control over their partner. And then even scarier is that real interference with those support services that can be helpful. And so, I want to encourage anyone that is navigating either abuse or mental health or both things, that there's support available. And so Maddie's going to tell you a little bit about some of the services available and how you might be able to access those.
Absolutely. And I think the most important part, speaking about mental health and DV, whether they are co-occurring or separately, there are so many services in our community that are accessible and available for you guys. At JBWS, we can, of course, support you with domestic violence and dating abuse. And if you are looking for other services regarding mental health, those are absolutely accessible in the community as well. Often individuals may like to pursue support separately for that mental health and for domestic violence and dating abuse piece. So JBWS is there for however we can be of support for you guys with this. So our community has a ton of other resources that are accessible, and we can also help you with both of those things. So I think the most important thing when discussing services is to reach out and get that help. They are available within the community. We can help make referrals and connect you to other supports as well. So just reach out and start that conversation. And GBWS is always there to provide those for you guys. Did you have anything else to add to that, Steph?
Yeah, no, Maddie, I think you covered most of it. And it certainly, you can access JBWS as a bridge to other services. Don't let insurance stop you. There, St. Clair's and other facilities in the county can work with you on sliding scale or, using public health systems in order to get some services and connections. So there's always someone out there to listen, and we'll drop the JBWS helpline number in the chat as always. Thank you for spending this time with us. We hope that everyone is safe and healthy, and we look forward to connecting again next month.